Good morning, everyone. It's our pleasure and our joy and really our honor to be here with you. My name is Haley, and this is Zach, and we have come to you from Ananda in Washington. We live and serve at our community farm up on Camano Island, which is just a little north of Seattle. And we've been living and serving there for just over 6 years now. And yesterday we had the opportunity to go out to your farm and do a workshop with a number of you, which was just lovely, and it was wonderful to be at your farm. And there are so many similarities, really, in just what the land has to offer. So what we get to do at home is steward our farm. We have animals. There's about 7 of us that live there full time. And just a lot of different activities that go on. We're surrounded all by native forest. And, I felt the same type of vibrations at the farm in Half Moon Bay, where there's this strong presence of nature. And though we're, working with the land, nature is very present. And you feel it just in the elements, in the wildlife, in the sounds of the creek, which are wonderful in Half Moon Bay. And we have similar things at home, and it can sound very idyllic that we get to live on a farm and grow food and live with the seasons and live in harmony with nature, and in a sense it really is, but we're not immune to the busyness of life that we all experience. And that busyness really is something that comes from ourselves. It's not the things around us, although we can feel like they are. It's how we relate to those things. We have so many opportunities at the farm, so many teachers that show us what it's like to live in a natural rhythm. Like I said, we have animals, and our animals never force things that are not harmonious with their own nature. Right now we're under several inches of snow at home, which is a little bit unusual, but it can happen. And the chickens aren't thinking to themselves, I need to go out and scratch and dig up worms and find things to eat. They're in their coop thinking, no way am I going out there in several inches of snow. The plants are the same way. They are not forcing anything that is not their own nature. The dogs are interesting because they have a little more, their egos are just a little bit more developed than, say, the chickens. And so the dogs will do something like one of their favorite things to do recently is after breakfast is to go on an adventure and see what the neighbor has in their trash can. And so they're taking off. We see them taking off down the driveway. And they're going to do that. But they know that we have, they're very connected to their people. And though they have this small desire to go visit the neighbor's trash, they really want to please us more than anything. So we see them taking off very joyfully down the driveway together. We have 2 dogs. And as soon as we open the door and say, dogs, they just come running back very happily. And so we have lots of teachers on the farm, and we all have lots of teachers in our lives. And it's really when we find ourselves harboring attitudes that are not harmonious to our own nature, that we lose touch with our own nature. And when we are having those disharmonious attitudes, we start to feel tension in ourselves. And this can manifest in many different ways. It can be grief or anxiety or restlessness. We all have our own things that we feel. But tension in our lives is really an opportunity for us to become more aware. Yogananda gave us the energization exercises, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with them. But if you're not, it's a series of exercises that we do with the body where we're consciously tensing the entire body or different parts of the body to bring awareness to that part. So one thing that we do is with a double breath, we tense the whole body. And this is something we can all do right now. We can double inhale through the nose. And again. And what that tension does is it brings more awareness, and then what do we do as soon as we tense in energization? We relax. And how much easier is it to relax once we have that awareness? We may have been holding tension we weren't aware of. And so when we bring in more tension or more energy, we can become more aware of things. When we begin our energization practice, Yogananda offered us a prayer that we could say before to help get ourselves open and receptive to receive the benefits. We're inviting cosmic energy into our bodies. And our bodies are cosmic energy already, but we've forgotten. There's a little veil, so we have to remind ourselves, okay, fill my body with cosmic energy. Fill my mind with concentration. Not fill my mind with lots of thoughts, but fill my mind with concentration. Right here is where we focus. Fill my soul with thy ever-new joy. And again, that is the nature of our soul. And this prayer helps us to be open to that and be receptive to that nature, because sometimes a veil can come in front and we can forget. But using the principles of energization, we talked a little bit about it at our workshop yesterday, and Yogananda actually said that if you could just choose one yogic technique that he brought to choose energization, because it will, through those principles, you will discover everything else. And so I have a story I'd like to share with you about a time for Zach and I when we had a lot of tension in our lives. We were able to spend 2 summer seasons living in the high country of the Sierra Mountains. And the story how we got there is, it's a whole story on its own, but just say we were in our 2nd season, we were already there. And we had a nice little campsite at about 8,400 feet, and we had 2 campgrounds that we took care of, and we loved our job. We were stewards of this beautiful piece of the forest, and we got to greet campers, and everybody's in a good mood when they're on vacation and they're camping. So it was very pleasant dealing with people. And our job was to clean bathrooms and to pick up trash and just generally be stewards of this little piece of land. And it was absolutely beautiful. And it was very, very simple. We were literally up above so many things, and we felt even lighter in our thoughts. And yet at the same time, it wasn't perfect. And we had our direct supervisor, it felt like he was out to get us. Do you know the cartoon character Yosemite Sam? He was kind of like Yosemite Sam. He was an angry man. He was very controlling. I think he could tell how much we loved where we were and how much we loved what we were doing, and that really didn't sit well with him. And so it felt like he was doing all these little things to sabotage us, and we started to actually let it get to us. And we didn't see him often, but maybe a couple times a week he would come up, and we began to focus on all the things that he was doing wrong and all the ways that he was making our lives difficult. And here we are in this beautiful piece of nature, all this harmony around us, and we were not able to fully be present and enjoy it because we felt this tension in ourselves from our interactions with this person. And so it reached a point where we were actually able to recognize that tension and to say, this is not worth it. We have this beautiful, perfect job, perfect place to live, but we have to let it go. And in that moment, we were able to recognize it and to relax. And when we relax, we're open. We're open to what can come. And we decided that, well, it will be okay, whatever happens. And we said, we're going to quit. We're going to leave all this behind. We had a full-time job. We got paid to live in the mountains and steward and go hiking, and it was perfect. But we thought, we don't know what's coming. We can just continue camping the rest of the summer. We might not get paid anymore, but we can still stay here in this general area. And so, and just to think too, our boss, our supervisor, his name was Clayton, and we called him Clayton the Terrible, which just kind of gives you a sense for where we were at with things. Now we've been able to see that he really just needed love, that he had a lot of insecurity, but at the time, that's not where we were. And so he came up, and his boss came up, and we told them, we quit. We can't do this anymore. This is, here's a few reasons why this isn't working, and we're done. And we were prepared. We were totally open in that moment to whatever was going to come. And what actually came from that was something better than we ever could have imagined. We got transferred to a different part of the mountain. We had 2 saintly friends that we had met, one of which we're still in contact with, and is a very dear friend to us. And we got to we got removed from this reality with Clayton the Terrible and put in between our 2 saintly friends, and so many opportunities opened up to us. In those next few months of our journey in the mountains, we met people that we still have relationships with today. We were guided to our path to farming. Something we knew we were supposed to do, but the pieces actually started coming together, and we started meeting the people along the way that helped us to actually realize what we felt in ourselves was there to be done. And that wouldn't have happened if we had just kept clinging to, we have the perfect job. Everything is just how it should be. A big part of us didn't want to let it go, but God was trying to tell us something else. I have something else in store for you. And so he gave us this challenge and this difficulty so that we would feel that tension in ourselves that would then let us know that something else is at work here. And when we let go of our plan, his plan was able to come in. And like I said, it was so much better than we ever imagined and so much better than we ever could have planned. And so that's something that we can all start to notice in our lives, is that when something, it's not about an outward thing. It's really about how you feel in yourself. And when you feel a tension, it's God trying to bring more awareness to you that something might be trying to shift, might be trying to change. But the only way that you're going to know what that shift and change is if you can relax into it. And if you can open yourself and have faith that there is a greater plan. And we may not be able to always know what that is, but if we're open and we keep taking the steps forward, it will be revealed to us.
Well, I certainly didn't expect to think about Clayton the Terrible this morning, but it did bring me back. I'll just reiterate Haley's opening thoughts, that how nice it is to be here with you guys, that there's something for us special about coming to this community in particular, that it feels like coming home. I think a lot of the connections we have with the young people here and with our mother hen sitting on stage with us, there's something there that, we haven't known each other that long, but we really know each other. So thanks for being here with us today. I kind of want to just build on this idea of receptivity and what that really means in our lives. Because one aspect of just simply being here and living is that we're constantly receiving things, that we're constantly receptive to something. It's like we had a great experience on our way down here when Haley didn't mention what the Seattle people are calling the few inches of snow as snowpocalypse right now. And so when we were trying to fly down here on Friday morning, it was insane. It was chaos at the SeaTac airport. But we were still in the midst of that and kind of enjoying it, but also realizing it was going to take us like an hour and a half to get through security. So not totally enjoying it. And about a half hour into this line, we kept listening to the people in front of us and the people behind us. And it was these kids that were talking like the nerds from that TV show. What's that TV show called? The Big Bang Theory. I don't have TV, but at Haley's grandma's on Sundays in the afternoon, sometimes this show will come on, and I've been exposed to this show. And the way that these nerds talk to each other is always like really funny and intriguing to me. And then we're in this line, and in both directions, there's like 10 of them in front of us and 10 of them behind us. And I couldn't understand anything they were talking about, and it was hilarious. And at one point, Haley goes, "Are they in high school or college? Who are they?" And I'm like, I have no idea. And we're like, we need to ask them. And so behind us were 3 that were a little bit softer than the others and seemed a little more open to talking to us. So we turned around at one point and we're like, "Who are you guys?" And they're like, "We're a debate team from Western Washington." And I was like, oh, that explains everything. The debaters. The great debaters. So here ensued an amazing conversation where we're just peppering them with questions, because that is really interesting. They were traveling to, I think, San Diego for a big debate, a big national debate. And I'm like, well, who's the best debate team? What's the number 1 debate team? And they're like, we are. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And they pointed to 2 kids up in the front and they're like, they're the top debaters in the country. And we're like, oh gosh. I'm like, what do you debate about? And they're like, everything. You can imagine this conversation. It was so much fun. And gradually we're working towards so you're debating political things, and we're like, what do you believe in? Like, do you ever have to debate things you don't believe in? All the time. We're like, oh man, that's brutal. And they were like, yeah, you kind of just become nihilist, is what one of them said. And you don't really believe in anything. And here they were, these super sweet kids, the 3 that we were talking to at least. And, but open enough to admit that their receptivity at this time was to nothing. That it was to debate itself. And to the point where when they're presented with a subject, this is their words, I'm going to say, when they're presented with something to debate, their mind, not even just something to debate, any subject, their mind goes straight into arguing the point. And that was really interesting for me, because here I am trying to tune into this idea of receptivity, and it occurred to me that we're all receiving things. We're all receptive to something all the time. For them, it was debating, and I don't mean to judge them, because I also can see that in some ways they have reached that point of emptiness that can be a great foundation to build something real. And yet it did make me reflect on our own receptivity, the fact that we can sit in this temple and be receptive to these masters and these teachings. It's like we don't really have a choice whether we're receiving things, but what we receive and how we receive it is our choice. And it makes a big difference how we choose to make that choice. Haley and I also teach Raja at our temple in Washington, and we've had different classes, I'll say, and different types of people are magnetized to be together. And so we've had really heart-centered groups follow extremely mental groups. And it's been really interesting to see people's energy and how they receive what we can try to share. All we can do is try to share anything that we've been able to pick up. And this group that we have right now has been really interesting. We have about 6 or 7 middle-aged Indian women who, when we sit in our circle and we say anything, they nod along with so much joy. And I can feel that they bring out more in me, because they are not only listening, they are receiving everything that we offer them with joy. Not with judgment and not with thinking anything's wrong, even when we blabber and miss the point. They just receive it with joy. And I've thought, what a great inspiration they have been just in 3 classes for me, to see that how to receive. That when we receive things, in the right spirit, in the spirit of Ananda and joy, the channel opens up much, much wider, much bigger than when we receive things through the filter of our little selves. I want to keep adding to this, this concept of receiving, and kind of complete the circle here, because being receptive is obviously our goal, but if that becomes a passive approach to life, that I want to receive things, the circle is not complete. The real way that we receive, and we know this from Christ, we know this from Master, we know this from every good thing that happens in our lives, is by giving. And so when we focus on that spirit of giving in others, that's really how we receive. And so when our goals are to receive joy and to receive love in our lives and to receive the masters in our lives, our job is to give all these things. And in that process, then we can receive them. A great friend of ours wrote a letter last week about her experience with finding her purpose and going to her teacher and asking, what is my purpose? Having her teacher give her a reason, and then her feeling like, yeah, that's my purpose, and then going through this process with the mind over the next few years of saying, but this doesn't fit in my purpose, and that I'm doing this, and this isn't my purpose, and putting up all these walls about what that purpose was. And so going back to the teacher again and saying, but what is my purpose? And at one point the teacher said, I would like to tell you, but I'm afraid you might not want to hear it. And she said, and I knew in that moment I had to listen to what he was going to say. And he said, your purpose, every time you ask, what is my purpose? You're asking, what's in it for me? What our job is to do is not to ask what's in it for me. It's to ask, how much can I give? And how much can I keep giving? And part of this life is to realize that there's really no limit, that we aren't the doers, that we give, and we think we have no more to give until we fall down and we get back up and we realize, I've got a lot more to give. And I have to keep giving if I really want to receive the grace that the masters have to give to me. And so that is completing the circle of receiving is for us to give. And what do we give? In the reading, Swami says that truth is not a well-worded definition. It's a state of consciousness. And when I think about truth, my mind automatically goes to Sri Yukteswar. And I think about the words in the counsel Sri Yukteswar gave about wisdom and what wisdom really is. And what Sri Yukteswar, the great Jnana yogi of our path, said is that wisdom is love. And that the gift of nature is love. And that when we feel that love in our hearts, we have that gift to give to everyone. Everything becomes healed within ourselves. Everything is right when we live in that place of love. And so I can imagine nothing better for us to give to each other, to the world, with no limits, with no boundaries of what Ananda is, who my community is. It's all love everywhere. And when we greet the world in that spirit, that's what comes back to us. Not because that's what we expect, because that's just the law of this world. So thank you all for giving your love so freely and having us here. I think when I walked out on stage and I saw that somebody had planted an orchard for the altar in the temple today, I felt so loved. So yeah, from my heart, all our hearts were connected. So, Om Guru.